Hey there, welcome to Motion with James, a place where you can learn Apple Motion 5 so you can do more in Final Cut Pro. In this video, I'll show you how to create a simple list plugin that allows you to adjust the spacing with an on-screen control, like so, and that can also maintain the spacing if one of the items has multiple lines. So if I add one more line here, well, spell that wrong, you can see that the spacing remains the same. If you want to learn how to make a super customizable bullet point list plugin that also allows you to change its scale and position with on-screen controls to choose how many bullet points you want, to show or hide the bullet numbers, and to have a text background with adjustable roundness, let me know in the comments and be sure to subscribe. Okay, let's get started. First things first, obviously launch Motion, and you should be seeing this project browser. If you don't, you can go up here in File, New from Project Browser. We're going to be using the Final Cut title, so select that. And up here, it doesn't really matter if you choose 1080p or 4K because once you bring the title into the timeline, it will adapt to the resolution of the timeline. And frame rate, I'll leave it as it is. Duration is 10 seconds and click Open. So now, first thing I'll do is delete all that. So now it leaves us with a blank state. Now, the first thing we'll do is to create the on-screen control. So we're talking about this little guy here. So go up here, add object, generators, and we're going to be looking at the color solid. So click that. You can disable that because we don't actually need the color. The reason why we're using the color solid is so that we can put a filter on it. So go up to filter, distortion. The one we're looking for is poke. So you click that. Now you can see over here, we have a control here. So that's what we want. You can't really put a filter just on its own. So you need to have something else to put the filter on. Just for clarity, we're going to rename this to Poke OSC because later on we'll need to use it. Next, let's create a new group. So now let's click the text button here. And we'll click over here, type text. And make sure the text layer is under group 1. So you don't want it to be under the group that the color solid is. So now let's go to text and we can go to inspector and we'll first go up here to properties and we'll just reset it so it's nice in the center. It's a little bit small, so let's make it a little bit bigger so we can see it easier. Like that, okay. Actually, let's write text 1 because this is going to be our first item in the list. I'm going to rename that as well. Now we're going to create our second bullet. So right click here and duplicate and we'll name it properly. Or text 2 and we'll do that here as well so we know. And let's just move this up. Now, both text layers are overlapping each other. Obviously, that's not what we want. So let's create a space between text 1 and text 2. Obviously, we don't want to just move it like that because then we can't really control it later on with an on-screen control. So go to text 2, come here to properties. Let's open the little triangle. For the y-axis, let's go to the little button here. Click that and go to add parameter behavior. We'll go down here and choose link. And so now let's drag text 1 over here. And then in source parameter, we'll click compatible parameters here and then go to object attribute, go to edge, and then we'll click bottom. So why did we do that? The reason is that we want to make text 2 look at text 1's bottom edge. And that's why you're seeing a little difference here. Like if I disable it, so now it's a little bit lower. Now, if I move this edge offset, now I'm moving it because text 2 is looking at the bottom edge of text 1, and this will come in handy later. Now let's reset the parameter. If we're looking at this link behavior here, the source object is text 1 because that's where we drag it here. So it's applying text 1's bottom edge to text 2's Y position. So the link behavior is linking these two parameters together. Now, if we were to create the third item, let's right click that and duplicate. And we'll move it over. Now, if we go to the text 3 link, we want the text 3 to be looking at the bottom of text 2, not text 1. So to do that, all you have to do is click and drag text 2 over here. So now you can see how it's kind of started to scatter. And the reason why is now text 3 is looking at text 2 instead of text 1. So obviously there's a little bit more of a gap. Before we move on, let's name it so we know what's going on after. So now let's say, let me move this. Let's say this is how much space I want between each text. Let's do a whole number. So you can see it created a little space here. So let's say this is how much space I want for all the items. Now, if I type something here, type a second line, you can see how it would automatically pushes text 2 down because text 2 is looking at the bottom of the whole text 1. So that means now there's 2 lines. So it's obviously looking at the bottom of the second line. So let's delete that. And let's also reset this part. Now, obviously, the point is that I don't need to set the spacing for each item, right? We want, remember, something that does this. So let's reset. The trick here is that we can link the edge offset over here for each item to one single control so that when you move that control, it will change the edge offset for all the items. This is where our poke OSC will come in handy. If you go to the filter and click filter here and open up the center, you can see X and Y. So the Y is what we'll use to be that control. Remember, if you look back here, we want to use this to control the spacing. So let's go back to text 2, click link to text 1 bottom. And now let's go here to edge offset. We'll click here again, and we'll go to add parameter behavior. And once again, we'll use link. So we're linking the link. What are we linking this to? Remember, we're linking it to the poke OSC. This is our on-screen control. So let's click and drag this. You cannot drag the filter, so you have to drag the color solid. Now, if you come here to source parameter, compatible parameters, and we're looking at filter. And we're looking for, you can see poke OSC is right here. And we're looking for the y-axis. It's showing you what's in here. You can see how it's center, radius, scale, mix. We have all these 4 things to link. But what we want to link is the y-axis. So center, let's do the y-axis. So now you can see how it changed here. Let me disable text 3 so you can see a little bit what's going on. So you can see now text 2 is now a little bit above text 1. So it has been shifted upward. The reason why is that if we come back to poke OSC, you can see that over here by default is 0.5. So it's basically shifted up 0.5. So let's reset that. So come back here and let's actually rename this. So there's a Y offset here, right? So if we put negative 0.5, which will negate the 0.5 found in here. Now we put negative 0.5. So now it becomes 0. So now you can see over here, it's back to where it's supposed to be. So if I disable it, this position doesn't change. So now if we go to poke OSC, if we move this, you can see how it's moving text 2. So now we have successfully linked the spacing between 1 and 2 to the on-screen control. But obviously our job here is not done because if I turn on text 3, it's just stuck with text 2. Like the spacing is not changing. Let's fix that. We basically need to do the same thing to text 3. Remember, we're trying to link the edge offset, right? So I have this one for text 3 selected, and now I go here for the edge offset. Come here, add parameter behavior. Once again, it's link. So it's the same idea. We want to use the poke OSC as the on-screen control, right? So let's click and drag. It's the exact same thing as what we did to text 2. So now once again, let's rename it. and go here, filter, poke OSC, center, and Y. Now, looking back at here, you see it did the same thing where it moved text 3 upward. And we know now it's because of the 0.5. So now we just need to reset it. So negative 0.5. So now, if we go to poke OSC again, and we click and drag, you can see how the spacing changes as we hope it would. So this is the basics of creating the mechanics. Now, you can call it a day here, but there are a few things that can make this a lot more user-friendly. First is that you notice that you can move the on-screen control anywhere, but we really just need to move it down, right? Like moving it to the left or right doesn't really do anything. So let's make it so that we can only move it down. The way you do that is by limiting the movement of the filter's x-axis, right? So you click the filter, come here, go to filter tab, and in center, click this one for the x-axis instead of the y. We'll go to add parameter behavior. We'll go to clamp. It literally means what the word means. It clamps the movement. So I know on top of my head that 0.5 is more or less in the middle. So if I put 0.5 here, this as a minimum, so the maximum, also set it to 0.5. This way, it's locked in place. So if we click poke OSC, now it's in the middle, and I can't move it to the left or right. I can only move it up and down. Now, you can actually tweak the position of the on-screen control if you want. Let's say I want to put it on the right side. I would go back here to clamp, and I would move this to like 0.55. And do the same for max. So if we go back to poke OSC, now it's in the middle. I'm going to actually change it to 0.65. And so now it's on the right side. This is just how I like it. So now it's on the right side. I move it up and down, but not left and right. So this is perfect. Let's put it back in place. Another thing I don't like is that the spacing is expanding way too slow. So I'm moving this all the way here, and it only made a little bit of a difference, right? This is just too slow. It's not practical. Let's make it move faster. To do that, we'll go back to link to poke. What we need to look at now is the scale. The scale here is basically a multiplier. Now it's 1, so it's like 1 times speed. So if I put it to 10, and I'll do the same for the other one, you have to actually. Otherwise, they won't move at the same speed. So I'm going to put this as 10 as well. Now, if we go back to poke OSC and move this now, you can see how much faster it moves. Now, if you don't have the scale the same for all the text, let's say text 2 is 10 and text 3 is 5. That means when you move this on-screen control, one will be faster than the other. You can see now the spacing is not equal. So this is not what we want. This is why you have to make sure that the scale is the same. If you think this is too fast, you can actually customize it by, let's say you want it to be a little bit slower. Let's put 6 here and put 6 as well. So now if we go back to poke, and now it's slightly slower. So you can tweak that to your liking. Now let's go back to the default state. This is another thing that we can improve. By default, this is what we see. It's way too compact. Let's make it more reasonable so when we click and drag it in Final Cut Pro, we don't always have to change it. So to do that, it's very easy. You just need to go back to link to poke. Instead of 0.5, let's just move it to something we like. Let's say I want something like that, negative 0.56. So we'll have to do that for the other one as well. Okay, so now you can see that the spacing is much more reasonable. So let's give it a quick test. If I type something here, let's say 2 lines text, 3 lines text, and now we try to move the spacing, you can see how it keeps the spacing exactly the same between each item, which is exactly what we want. So at this point, you can keep adding more items to the list. Let's say you want to have a fourth item. All you have to do is go to the last one here, duplicate it, rename it, and then let's put the text here as well. We'll order it properly. And now you just need to change it so that text 4 is looking at the bottom edge of text 3, not text 2. Because right now you can see how text 3 and text 4, they're overlapping because they're both looking at text 2's bottom. So over here, you just need to change this to text 3. So just go here and click and drag. And now go back here. You can see that now text 4 is in its proper place. And if we go back to the on-screen control, it will move just like the other ones because text 4 already has the correct value for linking to the on-screen control. Scale is 10, Y offset is 56. Now, if you change any of these numbers, Y offset and or the scale, you have to change it to all of them. Otherwise, they won't move at the same speed. If you want to learn how to make it so that you can choose how many items you want with a drop-down menu, I will be making another video to show you how to do that. So be sure to subscribe. So now we have our list. Obviously, we want to be able to use it in Final Cut Pro. So one thing you have to make sure is you have to go to the Poke OSC here, the filter. Make sure you have Publish OSC on, because otherwise you won't see the on-screen control. So now you have that enabled. You can go to File, Save, or Command S, give it a name, and you can put it in some category. I'm just going to put it in Motion Potion Tutorial, and now you can hit Publish. So you can now open Final Cut Pro. Let's delete that and make sure you're in the Titles and Generators folder, and then find the category you put it in, and you'll be able to see it here. So this is the one we just created, Simple List Tutorial. And we'll drag it into the timeline. And you can see that this is the on-screen control. And if we drag it, it's exactly what we wanted to do. We put 2 lines here. It responded just like that. The spacing remains the same between each item. That's it for this video. Be sure to give it a like if you learned something new. Leave a comment if you have any questions. I'll try my best to help you out. Subscribe if you want more Apple Motion tutorials. And I'll see you next time.